In this video, we'll be looking at Chapter 8, Section 8.2, on measures of the center from other sources. Remember from the previous video that we have three measures of center, and they are the mean, median, and mode. Now sometimes we may have a large data set, like the one that we have here, where we have 40 data values. And it may be difficult or time-consuming to add up all 40 values to find the mean. It might also be difficult to order those 40 values so that I can find the median. And we may not graph all of those values so that I could find the mode or do a stem and leaf plot. So I'm going to show you a few other ways that we can calculate these three measures of center from a frequency table. The mode is by far the easiest of the three to read from a data value frequency table. You'll notice that the frequency table lists how many times each data value occurs, and we see right away that 6 occurs 14 times, which is the data value that occurs the most. So I can quickly find that the mode equals 6. Now remember, we represent the mean with an X bar, and that equals the sum of all the data values divided by the number of all the data values. And again, it might take a while to add up 40 data values, so I'm going to show you a quick way to do this. First, we draw another column on the right side of the frequency table, and we call this the product column. And we call it the product column because we're actually going to multiply here. We're going to multiply the data value by its frequency. So in the first row, I have 3 times 1. The data value 3 occurs 1 time. So the product is 3. In the second row, I have the data value 4. And I'm going to multiply that by 2 because it occurs twice. And I get 8. And here's the rest of the chart filled in. This column allows me to quickly find the sum of all the data values. If I add this column up, I get 258. This is the same number I would get if I took all 40 data values individually and added them together. So this number represents sigma x. Now all I need is the number of total values, and we may know that from the problem, or if we don't know this number, we can simply add the frequency column, or sum the frequency column. And that gives me the total number of data points, which in this case is 40. And now that I know the sum of the data points and the number of the data points, I can use my equation to find the mean. And in this case, the mean equals 6.45. Now the median is slightly more tricky, but it's not too bad. Remember that in an ordered data set, we want to find the middle data point to use as the median, and we can do that by adding 1 to the number of data points and dividing by 2. So in this case, I have 40 data points, and I add 1, divide by 2, and I get 20.5. Now I want the 20.5th data point in the ordered data set. And the frequency table has sort of ordered the data for us. What we're going to do here is add sort of another column where we keep a running total of how many data points we have. So in the first row, we have 1 data point. So the total for that row is 1 data point. In the second row, we have 2 data points. So if I add that to the first row, I have 3 data points. And so this is a cumulative sort of process. I add the next row and I get 7, then 21, then 32. And I don't need to go any farther than that because, remember, I'm looking for the 20.5th data point, which is really the average of the 20th data point and the 21st data point. Well, notice that the first 7 data points are 3, 4, and 5. And then the next 14 data points are all 6. So the 20th data point and the 21st data point are both 6, and the average of 6 and 6 is simply 6. Notice that our mean, median, and mode are very close, which if we weren't careful we might assume that this was a symmetric data set. But if we look at the frequency table closely, we can see that this data set is slightly skewed. The data set is slightly positively skewed because I have more data values to the right of the mode. And if I were to graph that, I would see that in a nice bell curve like this. So be careful in assuming that a data set is symmetric without actually drawing the graph. Let's take a look at one more example. We've been given a data set, and this data represents the fitness level of students within a class. So each student was given a score, and then we know the number of students that received that score. So one student received a score of 5, 2 students received a score of 6, and so on. And we have a total of 20 students in the class. We're asked to find the mean, the median, and the mode. Remember, the mode is the most easy value to find, and it's simply the data point that occurs the most often. And we see that 8 occurs 7 times, which is the most out of any of the values, so the mode equals 8. And let's move these down here so we have room for our next measure of center, which is the median, and which is the mean. And remember, to find the mean, we want to add another column, which is the product column. And this is where we simply multiply the score or the data value with its frequency. So here I have 5, 12, and so on. Once I have these numbers, I can add them up, and I have a total of 157. And remember that the mean is the sum of the data values divided by the number of the data values. And so the sum is 157. And the number of data values comes from this column over here, and that's 20. And if I do that division, I get 7.85. And the last measure of center is the median. And to find that, we're going to add a running total of the frequencies of the data values. So I have 1 here, and then I add 2 to that to get 3, and then I add 4 to that to get 7, and so on and so forth. And also remember that I'm looking for the data value that falls in the center of the ordered set, and I get that from adding 1 to the total number of data points and dividing by 2. So I'm looking for the data value in the 10.5 position, which is really the average of the 10th and 11th data points. And we see that both the 10th and the 11th students occur in this row because only 7 students scored these scores. And then I have the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th students in here. So the 10th and 11th data points are both 8, and the average of 8 and 8 is 8. So that's my median. And just to highlight the answers here, we have the mode, mean, and median.